Good afternoon, Advocate Mossop SC.
Good afternoon, Chief Justice.
I noticed that you and I did our LLB at the same university.
I believe so.
But you qualified the year before I did.
Yes.
Well, on a lighter note, I draw consolation from the fact that I'm two days older than you are.
I see.
You've been an advocate for how many years now?
I joined the bar in 1996, so I'm in my 25th year.
And for how many years have you been silk?
I took silk on the 13th of December 2015, so I'm into my 6th year.
And I take it that practice has been fairly healthy. You've been doing fairly well.
Chief Justice, touch wood, I've been blessed. I've been lucky. It has been good to me. Thank you.
Thank you. And you've acted as a judge of the High Court?
I have, Chief Justice, on a number of occasions.
How many weeks or how many months would you say it comes down to?
24 weeks, Chief Justice, and I acted the whole of the first term of this year in Pietermaritzburg.
Any serious challenge with delivering your judgment timeously?
Chief Justice, no. I have no reserve judgments. The longest time period that I've taken to deliver a judgment is 6.5 weeks. And that is out of character for me, and I need to explain why it took that long. It was an appeal judgment that was, we heard on the last day of my term. And as we walked out of court, my colleague said to me that I was to be the scribe. So I went back to my practice, tried to deal with what had happened in my absence, and wrote the judgment. And I sent it through to him on the 18th of December, which was during the recess period. And he only looked at it towards the end of January, and it was then handed down. So that's the longest judgment that I've ever taken to prepare. The next longest is exactly a month. That judgment is one of the documents that I submitted along with my application. And the next longest is 12 days. That was an opposed motion where a money judgment was sought on application for payment of the sum of 270 million rand. Took 12 days to deliver that judgment, and it's obliquely referred to in my application under the heading of have any appeals been taken against your judgments. That is the judgment that I referred to where I believed that the appeal had been abandoned. That's what I was told, that the application for leave to appeal to the SCA had been abandoned, but I subsequently discovered after submitting my application that it had not been abandoned, and it was considered by the Supreme Court of Appeal, and the application was refused.
Thank you, sir. Colleagues, may I have the names of those who have questions for the advocate, please? So there is nobody?
Dodovu.
Schlemmer.
JP?
Thank you, Chief Justice. Advocate Mossop, you've acted for 24 weeks. What did these acting stints consist of?
Judge President, the first 3 were civil appointments, and the last 2, the full term, the first term of this year, were in crime. But unfortunately, crime didn't run because of COVID, so I made myself available to do civil work.
Yes. So most of it was civil work for the period that you've acted.
That is correct, yes.
Yes. And crime didn't proceed because of the COVID situation. Yes. And how many weeks in Durban and how many in Pietermaritzburg?
So the first term of this year was in Pietermaritzburg,
yes,
and all the other weeks were in Durban.
Do you find there's any difference between Durban and Maritzburg?
I think there is, Chief Justice, Judge President. The workload, I think, is heavier in Durban.
Yes. And how did you manage to cope with that?
Judge President, I have a a work ethic which is relatively well known. I'm a very early starter. So when I acted in Durban, I was in chambers at 6 o'clock each morning, and I would leave only when the work had been completed and I had completed my preparation for what was coming next. Unfortunately, I couldn't keep to that schedule when I was acting in Pietermaritzburg. I would get to court between 6:30 and 7 in the morning, and that after having driven 90 kilometers to the court. But I'm an early person. I'm not a late night worker. And so I found it quite easy to handle the workload.
And your practice, what did that mostly consist of?
When I started originally, Judge President, I came from a criminal background, and it was largely criminal, but that rather swiftly changed. And I would say for the last 20 odd years, it's been primarily a civil commercial practice. I've involved myself in a wider range of matters, and I've sat in arbitrations both as an arbitrator and as a representative of parties. So it's largely now a civil matter. I haven't civil practice. I haven't been in a criminal court as a practitioner for a while.
And what is it that you think that you could bring to the KwaZulu-Natal bench?
Judge President, I think 34 years of experience over as wide a field as you could imagine: crime, civil work. I've sat as a magistrate for 5 years in Durban. I regularly received commendations, and over 10, in fact, from judges of the High Court, or the Supreme Court as it then was, for my work, the clarity of my reasoning, and for the empathy that I showed when sentencing people, because I was in the criminal section. I think I have a broad range of experience that could be of some use to the community and to the bench.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you, Judge President. MEC?
Thanks, CJ. Just one question, Advocate. What do you think should be a cornerstone of a transformed judiciary system?
Well, I think the first thing that the Constitution mentions is that the profile of the bench should try and match the profile of society. I think they use the word should approximate towards what the racial profile of this country is. And I think that's important, because everyone needs to have examples to look up to. So young Black practitioners need to see Black judges. So I think getting the racial transformation of the bench is very important. It should be given effect to, but not at the price of making the court less effective. The JSC needs to pick the right people.
Okay, thank you.
Follow-up, CJ.
Honorable Dodovu.
Thank you very much, Chief Justice. Good afternoon,
Good afternoon,
Advocate. I want to ask you questions around the presumption of innocence.
Yes.
A lot of people say one of the pillars of our constitutional democracy that is contained in the presumptions of statutes, it is that presumption that you are innocent until proven otherwise. If I'm facing serious charges and I decide not to step down from my position and that I'm fired or I'm suspended, what are my prospects of success if I go to court to challenge that matter?
It's very difficult to say. I first have to have a brief if I want to give you an opinion.
Yes, give me an opinion. And raise the appropriate fee.
I'm not sure that the presumption of innocence is something that extends outside the courtroom. I think that's where its true home is. I don't think that in your workplace or in such circumstances that the presumption of innocence is something that you can rely upon. I think in a court of law, it is essential, especially insofar as the criminal section is concerned.
Say in this case, I'm a church leader.
Yes.
Let me take that example, and I'm a president of a church, and that there are certain allegations about me. I'm charged in a court of law,
Yes.
and obviously in relation to what you've just said, the presumption of innocence applies.
Yes.
But my church fires me for my position irrespective while the case is ensuing, and I'm not happy about that decision. Then I approach a court of law. What would be my prospects?
Well, you would have to take it on review, but it would also depend largely upon what your church constitution says, because the church is a voluntary association of people.
Yes.
And your constitution will tell you what your rights are if X or Y happens. So I would have to know what your constitution says in order to advise you on whether you have prospects of somehow setting aside the decision that you are subject to.
As my brothers here have taught me over the last, and sisters, of course,
Yes.
have taught me over the last 2 years, they say to me, no, it's okay, but remember, your constitution of the church is superseded by the constitution of the republic.
Yeah, 100%.
But you're saying it will depend on my constitution.
No. Yes, but so if your constitution has something in it that is contrary to the constitution of
Yes,
the country,
it's invalid.
you've got very slim chances of succeeding.
Yes, I'm asking you this question in the context of our constitution of the republic, thinking of the founding principles of our constitution. Hence, I want to test your knowledge in this particular instance.
Well, I'm not sure.
Because I want to decide whether to step aside or what.
That's a very topical question at the moment. I can't tell you what the answer is, because I don't know what your constitution says. I don't know if it conforms with what the constitution of this country says. Those are factors that need to be considered before a positive assertion is made by me. You may approach the court, and the court may or may not decide in your favor. But I don't think that anyone can be compelled to step aside if the constitution upon which that organization is based does not allow for that or does not require that to occur. So I must
say that this is a very contentious issue that I'm grappling with.
Yeah.
I guess other members here, colleagues grapple with that, and we'll see how it goes. But thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
For your input. Thank you, CJ.
Thank you, Honorable Dodovu. Advocate Mossop, I hope the colors of your tie did not drive the honorable member to put that question to you. Prof?
Oh, yes.
Prof?
Good afternoon.
The microphone is on. Thank you, CJ. Can you tell us what your judicial philosophy is, please?
Prof, we live in a constitutional democracy, and I think that our philosophy should all be the same. We should be attempting to instill and carry forward the principles of constitutional democracy, and I think those are to be found in section 1A, B, and C of the Constitution. Emphasis on human dignity, achievement of equality, and the advancement of human rights, the abolition of discrimination and gender discrimination, and an acknowledgement that the true law of the country, the principal law of the country, is the Constitution, supported by the rule of law. That's what we should be striving towards.
Thank you. The work that you've done in the small claims court,
yes,
does that link up with your judicial philosophy and with your whole attitude towards the country?
Professor, I'm not entirely sure. It's done on an informal basis, and I think that if it did tie in with the Constitution, it may be in the sense of some form of Ubuntu being displayed, where you consider the position of the people, that they are neighbors, they might be friends. It's a more human approach, a more personalized approach than in the High Court, which can be rather informal. There we grapple with everyday real problems that people have. And it's an excellent place to reaffirm your values and to it's a reality check because, you know, in practice, when you're dealing with large commercial matters, it's very easy to lose sight of the value of a rand. But you'll see in the small claims court, people sue each other for 200 rand. And it's not being done just out of maliciousness or nastiness. It's because 200 rand is a lot to those people. So it helps keep you grounded. I hope that there is a constitutional imperative there. And we always try and make sure that justice is fairly administered. So yes, I think there is probably.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof.
CJ.
Thank you, Prof. Yes, Commissioner Sigogo.
Thank you. Thank you very much, CJ. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Sigogo.
Yes. I wanted to make a follow-up immediately after the MEC.
Yes.
The MEC asked you about what do you consider a transformed judiciary?
Yes.
And you indicated that it should be the one which reflects the demographics of the society. Then you continued to say, but.
Yes, I did say that.
The JSC must as well appoint the right people.
Yes.
Does it mean those who are appointed in order to reflect the demographics of the country, not the right people? Hence, we will need to appoint others who will then be the right people for the judiciary. I don't want to misunderstand you.
No.
I want to understand you.
No, I'm saying people of the right color, there are plenty of good people who should be appointed. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't mean that you have to appoint a white man because he's going to do the job properly. You need to appoint good black people to that position so that it broadly reflects the profile of this country.
So, and I think that is what we are doing, that when we appoint people, we're appointing people who meet the minimum threshold.
Yes.
Educationally, as well as in respect of their standing, in as far as fit and proper is concerned.
Yes. But yes, no, if that is what the criteria is and that is what is applied, then you're doing a brilliant job.
So I'm worried about the but because it gives an impression that it crushes all what you have said before you use the word but.
No, certainly it wasn't intended as that. There are many, many excellent black practitioners, white practitioners. You need to choose the right people for the job.
Thank you for that. Thank you, CJ.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Advocate Mossop. Say your excuse, sir.
Thank you very much, Chief Justice. Thank you very much, Commissioners.